the first thing we need to see more of is really a vast new effort on deeply affordable housing. We across the country are experiencing an affordable housing crisis. Right now, across the country, there are only 35 units of housing that is affordable, meaning that families can spend less than 30% of their household income on rent. For every 100 families who are extremely low income or families that make 30% or less of the area median income where they are. This problem, the homelessness crisis that we see, is not a result of mental health disabilities. It's not a result of substance use disabilities. At its heart, it is a crisis of a lack of affordable housing. We weren't always this bad, but we've been this bad since the early 1980s, since the federal government really backed out and really significantly decreased their efforts on affordable housing. If we were able to build and create housing that was affordable to people who make between 0 and 30% of the area median income, a lot of this problem would disappear overnight. So that has to be role number one, is really focusing on the housing affordability crisis. You can do that primarily by building housing that is subsidized, that's available. You can also do that by lifting people's incomes to a certain extent. If people had more income, they could spend more on housing. But what we really need to do is a massive investment in deeply affordable housing, or the type of housing that families who are on the lower third of the income scale can afford and still feed their family and still clothe their family and still get health care for their family. The other thing that we're doing quite a good job on, but we need more, is the recognition that some people will always need more support. And that's true in any culture that you go. And that those folks who need more support, we actually know what works for them. For folks who have significant what we call behavioral disabilities, mental health problems or substance use problems are the main ones, we know that we can effectively house them through something called Housing First, or permanent supportive housing. What this is housing that's subsidized so that they pay only 30% of their income on rent, which is the sort of acceptable amount that you're supposed to spend on housing, and that there are services that are available to them. Services like case management and money management, healthcare, mental health care, substance use, and that these services are voluntary. In the old days, we used to demand that the only people who were homeless who could get housed were people who adhered to every rule that was put down, that you don't use substances or that you take your psychiatric medicines. But the problem is, it's almost impossible to engage in those types of treatments while you're still homeless. What Housing First says, which by the way is the law of the land, it's the accepted method of treating chronic homelessness, what it says is bring people into housing first, don't make all these demands on them. But once they're housed, offer them these services. And lo and behold, what we've learned is that 85% of people who enter supportive housing, even if they have very, very, very severe difficulties with mental health or substance use, are able to stay housed. And usually what happens is their mental health and their substance use gets a lot better. So that's another thing that we need to expand as much as we can. In many places, the rate limiting step of expanding that is really the lack of housing, but there are still some places that haven't adopted it as vociferously as others have. And we definitely need more permanent supportive housing. So the first thing I would do is build a lot more deeply affordable housing that is affordable to people who make 30% or less of the area median income. I promise you, if we did that, most of this problem would disappear overnight. And then the next thing we need to do is, for the people who need more help, is to provide that help in the form of Housing First, permanent supportive housing.